And we will begin the meeting. So I will note public access to meetings due to the public health emergency and the need to limit gatherings. We are strongly encouraging members of the public to attend school board meetings remotely. I do want to note for board members, as well as members of administration who are here this evening, the governor's order provides for the ability for board members to remove their mask if they are socially distanced, as well as for members of administration if we are speaking to educational issues. So if board members, when you're speaking, feel more comfortable removing your mask, you are able to do so under the governor's order. We will move into item 2, which is the meeting opening and roll call, and I will have Jan do the roll call and verification of quorum.
Ms. Baker?
Yes, here.
Mr. Pope?
Here.
Mr. Ebel?
Here.
Ms. Bang?
Here.
Ms. Portson?
Here.
Ms. Rano? Ms. Reno? Ms. Scott?
Here.
Mr. Wade?
Here.
Here. Do we have a quorum of board members present?
Yes.
We move into item 3, which is the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Moving into item 4, public comments. At the March 19th, 2020 special school board meeting, the Stevens Point Area Public School Board passed a motion to suspend public comment and to allow public comment through email. We, as of today, received 4 public comments. I'm going to remove my mask so that I can read them. Our first public comment was from John Weisbrod. It came in through email from John and Kathy Weisbrod, but noted that the submitter's name is John Weisbrod. His public comment is, I implore the Stevens Point Area School District Administration to publicly answer the significant questions well documented in the SPAEA reopening survey. As always, collaboration and intelligent leadership is needed for our community to rally around its schools. It takes a whole village to raise a child and to safely reopen our schools. Thank you. And he attached to the email that he provided the SPAEA survey that was started on July 21st. Our second comment was from Dawn Lass, and her comment was, how will we be able to enforce social distancing during passing times at SPASH, even if we have half the students there? The hallways are super crowded during passing time. Our third email comment came from Carrie Barlow. Does the district have a plan in place should a student or staff member get infected with COVID-19 and the unimaginable happens and they pass away? Are there adequate resources available for staff, students, and families? If families then choose to go e-learning from then on, is that feasible? Thank you. Our fourth comment was from Skylar Peets, and her comment is, there are countless unanswered questions that can't be conveyed in 50 words. I'm terrified that I could lose a student, a coworker, or a family member, and that by traveling around the school teaching music, I could somehow be responsible. Why are we doing this when there are other options? So those were the 4 emails that we received under public comment.
Is that an F1?
We will move into item 5, which is presentations, and the first presentation will be our Communications Director's report, Sarah O'Donnell.
Hi, I'm not sure where you would like me.
Why don't you come up?
You want to just, there you go.
Come up here so you're closer to the mic.
Am I mask on or mask off?
It's your choice. You can take
Okay.
your mask off
I
if
feel
you
like
choose
people
to.
can't hear me. Hi. Thank you. Good to see everyone. Included in your packet this evening is our July 2020 communications dashboard. Of significant note was the increase in media coverage. We received a significant amount, not just locally, but nationally as well. We had 97 pieces where we were mentioned or clipped between what we would consider to be traditional media, so online, newspapers, TV, etc. We continue to see very high engagement on our social channels. We find that a lot of parents specifically are engaging in that way. And then I did add for you, which is new to the report, our e-newsletters. I just wanted to capture our reopening of schools has seen over 80,000 views with a click-through engagement of over almost 2,500 links. So people are accessing that information. That said, it is a significant amount of information. So we are trying to find different ways to share that information out. We know that not everyone can digest that information as they read it. We know sometimes they're reading through it and they're missing things. So we've been working on putting together some pieces that are really specific to, for example, like that gradual start. That was very confusing for folks, rightfully so. It's a very big change. So trying to break out some of those pieces over time so folks have a chance to digest that. We've also introduced a weekly video series. Last week was specific for staff with Director Bakanovich. This week will be specific from Craig. So just again, trying to find different ways to share information. In addition to that, we added, and I believe Craig is going to touch on this as well, 6 listening sessions for this week, 3 for staff, 3 for families. Again, trying to break that up based on not necessarily subject matter, but who those questions might be for. Elementary focused versus secondary focused versus e-learning focused for our families as well. We're hoping that as we continue to share those, we had good response this morning, really good questions, high engagement, high participation. We had 208 total participants for this morning's staff listening session. I'm hoping that those continue. I'm in the process of pulling those questions along with questions from the SPAEA and some questions I've seen specific from some Maples teachers, just given the nature of, I think, how we're looking at reopening schools, to compile that into one document. So we have kind of that master doc and then have that one resource where folks can go back and take a look.
Any questions for Sarah? Any questions for Sarah from board members?
Can I just ask one?
Yeah.
You had 240 participants in the listening session this morning?
208.
208, okay.
Yeah,
And-
I think our highest at one time was like 160 something, but overall, we had 208 people participate.
Well, that's great.
Yeah, I was surprised by that high number, just given it's 10 o'clock in the morning on a Monday. Staff are not officially back for the most part. So we were pleased and very pleased to see people submitted a lot of questions ahead of time. And then people were very engaged during submitting questions as well. Answered as many as we could live, but I made sure to capture those so we can come back and either answer those. Some of them were very specific to individuals. So we want to make sure we're answering specific individual questions and then also providing that information out. If you have that question, someone else probably has that question. So how do we make that information easily accessible for folks on a regular basis?
Are you going to put that on the website or Facebook
Yes,
page or something, those
absolutely. Yep,
questions?
So we shared out the video today. I didn't want to hold that for too long, just knowing that that's going to take a little bit of time to sift through. There's repeats in there, obviously. But yeah, so making sure folks have the initial information and then coming back and again, trying to kind of compile those questions as they come in. And then we'll do the same for families as well.
Perfect, thank you.
Any other questions of Sarah?
Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah. We will move into the superintendent's report. Craig.
Thanks, Meg. Let me begin by stating that this is a very difficult situation for a lot of people for a lot of reasons. It's my 35th year in public education, 22 years as a superintendent. I haven't dealt with anything like this, nor has one of my colleagues, nor has anyone in this room. So trust me when I say that we are working diligently. We are keeping in the forefront health and safety of students and staff, as well as the well-being of our entire community. And quite frankly, for me, that becomes overwhelming because it's a massive undertaking and it's just critical for the Stevens Point Area Public School District. That said, I'm going to dialogue a little bit in terms of where we're at and why we're here in terms of reopening schools. You'll recall that in June, at the June school board meeting, the board approved a plan with various phases authorizing myself as superintendent to move through that plan. Last week, we announced the reopening phase, and we disclosed that. First and foremost, I want to remind everyone that all students have the ability, and all parents have the ability to sign their children up for e-learning. Without getting into the details, which was sent out, and we may get into later on in the agenda, it includes 4 days of face-to-face for elementary students, pre-K through 6, and blended for secondary students, 7-12. Wednesdays will be a planning day for staff members, as well as e-learning for pre-K 12. We will also take that opportunity to deep clean each and every one of our buildings. Of course, that's on top of the cleaning that we'll be doing on a daily basis. To date, we have 675 students, which is approximately 9% of our population, or our student population, that have signed up for e-learning. I've received feedback and guidance from many individuals and organizations, and quite frankly, that I use that to assist me to move forward with the decision-making process of where we start school in September, if I may, based on the plan that was approved by the school board. Feedback from those individuals and organizations certainly include our cabinet. We've met since March, every Tuesday, every Thursday, for a lengthy period of time each one of those days, and I want to commend the cabinet members for working tirelessly and literally around the clock to move this forward. My colleagues across the state of Wisconsin, I lean heavily on. I talk to 3 to 5 superintendents on a daily basis to get an understanding of how they're viewing things and what reaction they're getting from their communities. Obviously, the Department of Public Instruction has given guidance as well as the CDC, and I'll talk a little bit about that a little bit later. And then certainly the Portage County Health and Human Services. And I can't say enough thanks to Director Ray Shabilsky and Health Officer Gary Garski as I talk with them regularly, several times a week. And they've been a great assistance as we continue to plan forward. And of course, the WIAA has shared some guidelines as it relates to co-curricular activities, specific athletics. And I'd like to point out there, we are actually imposing higher restrictions in the Valley Conference than the WIAA is requiring. Knowing that the issues of co-curricular activities, as well as where we are within the phases of reopening school, will be readdressed prior to, in the event things change and we need to. My decision was based on a number of issues in terms of reopening schools to the extent that we can.
Sorry to interrupt, but if I had a question about summer school, could I ask it now before you go on to something else?
Yeah, it is on my agenda, but yes.
No, he's going to be addressing he's going to be addressing summer school.
Oh, okay.
That's part of his.
I thought he was done with it.
That's part of his
Sorry.
report.
Sorry.
I've got on my superintendent's report reopening update, food service, and then summer school. Continuing on, I made this decision based on Governor Evers' decision to have this be a local control issue. And he came out a couple weeks ago, and you've read what I read, a legislator accusing him of going to be shutting down all schools, and of course, I'm not sure where that came from. And Governor Evers was very clear that this should be up to each individual school district, as our communities and counties are experiencing very different statuses, if I may, as it relates to COVID-19. Portage County is in a very different situation than Dane County and in Milwaukee County, and of course that is the point of his local control. The CDC guidelines, the Center for Disease Control and Prevention's website clearly states that school closures is harmful for children. And I've been saying all along, we need guidance. And we are getting little guidance, but we have received guidance. And when we get guidance, we can't pick and choose guidance from professional organizations because we don't like it. That came out with the WIAA several weeks ago. The WIAA had a very difficult time making some changes, and then many districts said, well, we don't like what they did. Well, if you ask for guidance, and it's guidance, you don't have to accept it. But if you're asking for guidance that governs organizations and you decide, I want guidance, that's not the guidance I want, that becomes challenging. So the CDC is saying if you don't open up schools, it's harmful for a number of kids, for a lot of different reasons. But we know that we have children that they need to be in school as it relates to a number of things other than education. It's their only meal that day. It prevents a level of neglect within homes. There are many reasons why. I certainly support getting students, as many students and staff, back into our buildings safely as we can. If we don't do that, but the guidance says we can, what changes that would make us decide, well, now we will go back to school if we don't follow the guidance that we have in front of us? If we don't go and do everything we can, and it could change, all of this can change by September 1st. But if we don't continue to plan as if school's going to start September 1st, we won't be ready for when school does start. Now, we are going to start gradually. We backed up students. We increased professional development with staff for a week, and we have we've got a schedule that'll gradually bring students back into the schools, knowing if we do this slowly and well planned, the goal is to get children back in school. We increase the chances of doing that and keeping them there. And again, let me reiterate, for those that don't want to come to school as it relates to students and parents, we do have an option of e-learning. We also know that we have a number of staff members that aren't able to come for various health conditions, and we will accommodate those situations on an individual basis. Again, Portage County Health Department supports our plan of reopening, and again, we meet with them several times per week. As of today, there's 420 positive cases in Portage County. 88% of those have recovered, and 50 are active. So that would be 12% are active. I believe there were 5 individuals hospitalized. There currently are 2. There are no fatalities. Portage County has over 70,000 residents. And if you take a number of those that have been tested positive, it's 1% of our population. I think we need to keep that in mind. As I may stated in the beginning, we understand that there's anxiety and there's concern, and quite frankly, there's some fear. We get that. We're going to do everything we can to mitigate that. We're moving slowly. We're gathering a lot of information. We had, I think Sarah said, I said 170 people participants today. That was the number of students on, excuse me, staff at any particular given time. There were many, many questions. We answered those questions. There were also, it was a 1-hour webinar. There was also other questions that we didn't get to because of time. Those are being answered and will be put on the website. We were also had a request of a number of questions from the Teachers Association. Those have been answered as well. We also have a number of webinars. I'm just going to read these off. It'll be on the website, but we have webinars on August 11th. Family Full-Time E-Learning Q&A, August 12th. Staff 712 Q&A, August 12th. I will have a meeting with the Portage County Business Council. August 12th again, Family Pre-K 6. August 12th, Portage County Democrats. August 13th, 4K 6 staff, and August 13th, Family 712. So it'll be an opportunity for those groups to hear a very similar presentation from today. And today it was Corey Hirschbrunner, myself, and Beth Bacanovich. Sarah O'Donnell and Brian Casey were moderating the questions and bringing those forward. So it'll look similar to that. We have walkthroughs for the beginning of school year on August 28th. That will look very similar to what we did for summer school. We prepared, our principals prepared for all of the safety issues as it relates to the classrooms, and there were lists of checkoffs. And we are requiring all of our administrators in the buildings to do that again. And then there will be a walkthrough with various administrators, maintenance custodians, as it relates to making sure all of our buildings are ready to go. That said, I can't reinforce the responsibility that I feel and the commitment that I have to this community, which includes everyone in this room, all of our staff, and all of our children and families. Committed to make the best decisions that we can in a time that we don't necessarily understand. I do, however, believe we need to move forward, and we need to be very careful and very deliberate as we do so. Food service preparation. We served over 500,000 meals. Our participation since summer school has gone down. I think maybe the convenience of students actually being there. During the month of August, we reduced our preparation to 4 buildings, I believe, throughout the district, and 3 bus drop-offs throughout the district. We are also then looking at what 2021 looks like. The federal government has already approved 3 waivers as it relates to the time that we can serve. There's a time in the day that they give us. They're going to allow us to lengthen that time. They'll allow us to deliver meals off-site, which typically you can't do, i.e. for those that are in blended learning, and on Wednesdays when nobody's around, we'll be able to transport grab and go as we've been doing. And it'll allow for parent pickup. Parents will be able to come to school and pick up lunch. Unfortunately, however, they are not going to accommodate everyone and have a free lunch program as they did in the summer. There will be a cost to that, like there typically is. Summer school, we completed a 3-week session. We had 600 kids approximately. The feedback that we got from parents and students was outstanding. It went very well. I am so glad that we incorporated summer school. And G, you had a question on summer school.
Oh, you kind of answered it a little bit, but I just wanted to relate that one of the letters I received, and I think all board members did receive it, mentioned 2 COVID cases in summer school. I sent it on to you, and I think you cleared it up when you said they were cases, but they weren't involved with summer school, but they were in the district. Am I correct?
We have had, I got to be very careful here in terms of HIPAA, confidentiality, Beth. I don't want to overstep. Beth's pretty good at, typically, she's in the room, she'll, like kick me under the table. Craig, be careful with what you say. We've had 5 cases, that's all public record, at Portage County. We did have, during March and April, I think we had 3 cases, and then we had 2 cases over the summer. Keep in mind, we have many, many employees, regardless of summer school, that work in our buildings. We have this building was on a makeshift crew, I think, like the month of June, but by July, we were all back here. And so every one of our buildings have had to deal with these issues.
Yeah, it's just an instance of rumors, they're gonna fly,
Yeah.
and you can, and I'm glad you cleared it up right away to those people that sent that letter. Because anytime you see COVID in a sentence, all of a sudden you read.
Well, and we have to be ready for that. When we received that second COVID positive test, we were a business of
Outbreak.
Outbreak.
We were considered to have an outbreak.
We had an outbreak. We have over 1,000 employees in our school district. And 2, we were considered an outbreak. If somebody reads that the Stevens Point Area Public School District has an outbreak in COVID-19, they're going to say, oh my gosh, I'm pulling my kids out. It's 2. I mean, so I'll question that. Now, only because it was summer. Next year, when school starts, every building stands on its own. So Spash has 2, it's an outbreak. If we have 2, Bliss is an outbreak. But because we weren't in session, it was the entire school district. All of that information is available on the dashboard of the Portage County Health Department.
Craig, I have a question. I couldn't hear everything that G said. So you're saying that during summer school, we had no cases of COVID?
We had 2, cases of COVID during the month of July. Would that be safe to say, Beth?
I believe the 2 were in June, mid-June, and then the other 3 were over the course of the summer. So all five have recovered, and we're crossing our fingers that we don't have another one. But it'll probably happen.
And I will note, I think it's very important, G, as you're noting, that if you get a question, it's so important, again, as with everything else we say, to be able to forward that to Craig, so that if there is misinformation in the community, that we as a district are able to provide accurate information. And so I appreciate you bringing that question forward, and Craig being able to then respond both to you as well as to the community.
Craig, one more question on summer school. You said there were 600 students enrolled. Do you have any idea what the average daily attendance was? Because I did hear from some teachers that it was pretty scarce on a lot of days.
We could get that information. I don't have it readily available, Barb. But the numbers in summer school were significantly lower. We had classes that went all the way up to 20, but we had other classes that went all the way down to 6. And then, as any year with summer school, with vacations and people leaving town, kids come in and out on a frequent basis.
Okay, thank you.
Gee, if I can go back to your question, I can say this. that the cases that we had over summer did not involve a classroom.
That's what I got from your letter. So, you know, those things are gonna be running around, especially when school starts. People are rumor mongers, and
Yeah.
if there's some way we can, have, I don't know, you just gotta, if you hear of a case, you just gotta jump on it as fast as you can and
We
let
have,
the real information get out.
And I can chime in from a communication standpoint. Our goal would be to communicate that not only from close contact communication is one thing, right? You had an individual who we have is a confirmed case, right? HR knows you've been identified as a close contact. Here's the next steps. But then also we've talked about the potential of putting together some kind of overall dashboard visual for folks who can see and monitor, not just from a district-wide, but from a school-wide as well.
Well, that'd be great.
Important for people to have
Yeah.
that information.
Yeah.
Not just from a, like a rumor standpoint, but
Right.
from the ability to make informed decisions.
We will be extremely transparent as it relates to cases without violating law. And that's a fine line there. If somebody gets, I know people that have COVID, and they're gonna come right out and say, I got COVID. There are some people that just don't want other people, it's their own personal health, I get that. So we gotta be very careful. You get into smaller buildings and, somebody's gone, why is that person not here? So it's about communicating appropriately and reemphasizing accurate information and not rumor. Okay, thank you.
Okay, we will be discussing school reopening later in the agenda. Are there any board members who have any additional questions for Craig based on his report? All right. We will move into item 6, which is our consent agenda. We have the minutes of the July 13th, 2020 school board meeting, the approval of the schedule of monthly bills, and employment recommendations. Do I have a motion?
So move.
A motion to approve by Trish. Do I have a second?
Second, this is Barb.
Second by Barb. Any discussion or questions with respect to consent agenda? I will have Jan, could you call the roll due to the fact of the monthly bills, please?
Mr. Wade,
Yes.
Ms. Scott,
Yes.
Mr. Evil,
Yes.
Mr. Pope,
Yes.
Ms. Portson,
Yes.
Ms. Rennell, still not here,
She's excused.
Ms. Vang,
Yes.
Ms. Baker,
Yes.
Ms. Erler.
Yes. We will move into item 7, business services, and item A is the monthly financial statements submitted by Mike Kurtz.
Hey everyone, I just want to give you guys a real quick summary. The financials are through June 30th. They do include balance sheet highlights as well as revenue and expenditure highlights through that date. Since June 30th is the end of, that was the end of the fiscal year, I did include some of the revenue in terms of, I reported in terms of percent of budget, as well as some of the expenditures. And then with the expenditures, I also included whether or not we had a positive or a negative variance in terms of budget. But again, those are through the end of, or through June 30th, pretty much the end of the fiscal year. There are some adjustments that will still come along with some of the end of the year things. You guys have any questions?
How we doing, Mike?
I can't hear very well with this internet connection, unfortunately.
Sorry, just said, how are we doing, generally, how are we doing?
Chris said, how are we doing? How,
We are
overall?
doing just fine, Chris.
Thank you, I feel better.
Any other questions of Mike with respect to those monthly financial statements? Thanks, Mike. Moving
Thank
into
you.
item B, which is Workman's Comp Risk Analysis Report submitted by Tom Owens.
Good evening. I'm going to try to bring this up on the screen. Are you able to see that okay?
Yep,
Pretty small.
it's small, but we can see it.
Okay, that's as big as I can get it on my computer. You can click on your own laptops and see this as well. It's right in the minutes. The thing in particular I wanted to point out was the graph here. We did receive word, I told you at our last meeting, that there was a high probability that we would be adjusted downward to 1. It was looking to be slightly higher than 1. That did come through that way. So we've had 3 years here at the end where we've hovered right around very closely to 1, which has been great news. We've had some very tumultuous years here with claims and problems, et cetera. But through the efforts of a lot of staff and conscientiousness about safety, we have been able to keep it here, and we've been lucky without having a lot of incidents. So just wanted to report that, and it's a very, very positive outcome for our staff. Means fewer people are getting injured, and that of course helps the budget, keeping the premium costs down.
This is a report only. Do board members have any questions of Tom with respect to this workers' compensation report? Thanks, Tom.
Yep.
Moving into item C, which is Tom as well, is the Jefferson Elementary roof bid.
Okay, still sharing. The roof bid for Jefferson came in. It's $517,390. Would recommend approval. That roof has a lot of complicated pieces, small pieces on it, et cetera. So this is a little bit larger project in terms of complication. It's a little bit above. It is above what we budgeted for the roof, but overall we're still okay.
Any questions of Tom with respect to that roof bid? I am looking then for a motion to approve the Jefferson Elementary roof bid of Maurer Roofing, Inc. at $517,390.
So moved.
Motion
Second.
by Evil and second by G.
No, that was
No,
Mike.
somebody else.
Mike, sorry, by Mike. All right, any questions? All those in favor with aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We're moving into item 8, student services. A, annual resolution regarding expulsions with respect to the use of an independent hearing officer.
Good evening, everyone. This is our annual resolution for the board to approve the use of an independent hearing officer in lieu of the board hearing. We've been doing this since I've been here. We just have to have the board approve the use of that. This is just stating that if we have a situation or a student situation that we have to take to expulsion, we have to have an approval to use that independent hearing officer if indeed that case goes to that level. So I'm looking for a motion to approve the use of an independent hearing officer. We have been using Christine Hamill from Von Briesen and Rober. We've really appreciated her her guidance through these hearings. She's been very professional, very upfront, and just very equal in what we've had. And so our experience last year was very positive with her, and we like to continue that effort as well, but looking for that motion to approve this first item.
So moved.
Questions?
So I have a motion by Scott. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Ebel. Any discussion or questions with respect to the motion?
I had a question. What's that cost us?
That would be dependent upon the number and the complexity
Oh, okay.
of the issue. There are times that we have our own attorney representing administration. Depending on the situation, there are times when we don't because we feel it's very standard and very clear. So that's part of it, is are there two attorneys here? Are there one, will there be one? And it really depends on the complexity of the issue.
But just a ballpark, like,
Oh, we could pay $3,000 for an expulsion.
okay.
Now, keep in mind, if the board hears the expulsion, there's still costs because you as a board would still have your own attorney representing you, and we as an administration may have to have an attorney representing us. We still may have two attorneys in the room. And the cost, there's a cost for an expulsion, G.
Yeah.
And we have anywhere from 1 to a half a dozen a year.
Okay.
And for a very large school district like we have, that's really limited. Expulsion is a last resort for us as administrators. Because today there's so many different options for students. In a student that does something that's inappropriate, there are different options. So it really does come down to hardcore situations related to violence, whether it be gun violence or physical violence, sexual assault.
Yeah. Thanks.
Any other questions by board members with respect to the motion? All those in favor with aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Moving into item B, which is the revision of the staff and student harassment policies.
This is in conjunction with Beth. We are bringing forward revisions to our anti-harassment policies, our student policy 5517, as well as our employment policy 3362. In response to the recent events, as a desire to be proactive in our approaches, we are adding the following languages and definitions to harassment to both of these policies, or we're looking to add these to that. That harassment also includes hate speech, the use of language, behavior, images, symbols that express prejudice against a particular group or groups on the basis of any protected characteristics. And following examples, making statements that promote violence towards a racial or ethnic group, drawing, displaying, or posting images or symbols of prejudice, Confederate flag, or swastikas. And so I'm looking for a motion to approve the addition to the student anti-harassment policy 5517 and employment anti-harassment policy 3362 as presented.
So move as presented.
I have a motion by Baker. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Wade. Any discussion or questions with respect to the recommendation?
I've got a couple of things on here. I was reviewing it under, I believe, harassment, page 3 of 9. So I know that we had discussed about being inclusive and everything. Let me just bring it up here. So it's not part of that change that is highlighted. But looking at some of the language that is used, I have notes here. So the notes I have here, what is written is sexual harassment may involve the behavior, of a person of either gender against a person of the same or opposite gender. Is there any way we can change it to person so that we can be more inclusive, since we know that it's not just male or female, folks aren't identifying as just male or female?
And are you just referencing to be inclusive to the sexual orientation, so we're not being the gender aspect of it all?
Yeah, because I know that we had a long discussion about, trying to be as inclusive as possible.
Absolutely. And just so that I can follow you, Anne, are you looking for us to do that throughout? Because I know there's a couple of different sections on that we do mention that along the way, but would you like us to take a look at that and make sure?
Yeah, if we can look at all that to make sure that we have that so it's all inclusive. I also, see it. And then I'm not, okay, so if you look at the top of page 2, it should also just say harassment may occur person to person. So student to student, student to staff, staff to student, and then also person to person. Again, because it says male to female, female to male, some folks don't identify as either.
Okay. And are you looking for us to add the languages of person to person, or are you looking for us to remove the gender statements in there and add person to person instead?
Honestly, I would like to see it as person to person.
Okay.
I think it gets the LGBTQI community in terms, there's a lot of terms that are used.
Okay. I'm comfortable with that. And I would agree with that, Anne, so.
Okay. And then on the
I'm sorry, Caleb, I think we probably would want to run that by Shayna regarding the definition of harassment and maybe bring that back.
Okay.
Anne, are you comfortable with that, if we would be able to take these recommendations and bring those back for, at our next board meeting?
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Okay.
There's just a few more things that I noted on here.
Okay, what else?
If you look at the bottom of page 3 of 9, it says not all behavior, let's see. I should be a better note taker. Okay, so right on the bottom it says not all behavior with sexual connotations constitutes sexual harassment. And then a sex-based or gender-based conduct must be sufficiently severe, pervasive, and persistent, such that it adversely affects an individual's education or such that it creates a hostile or abusive educational environment, or such that it is intended to or has the effect of denying or limiting a student's ability to participate in or benefit from the educational program activities. What determines how that is defined as severe? And then, as I know a lot of folks who may be going through a lot of things, but they maintain their GPA and they maintain their extracurricular activities. So if they're maintaining that, but then they're reporting that there's continuous bullying or harassment, how do we define that at that point in time?
So I guess what, I believe, Anne, that's another question for Shayna. I believe that the language within here is a legal definition of sexual harassment, but that would be another question. Part of it is with respect to what the law requires us to have within certain of these policies, but that's another thing that we definitely should check with her on that.
Okay.
Caleb, I trust you're highlighting these areas?
Yes, I am.
Thank you.
Yep.
And I just want to clarify on page 4 of 9, it says board may address. And is that the school board itself, or is there another board that would be taking a look at these?
Where on 4 of 9, Ann?
Let me bring that back up here. So reporting procedures, at the last bit, so that first paragraph under reporting procedures, It says, district employee or official said that the board may address the conduct before it becomes severe. So the end of the second sentence to the third.
That would
Okay,
be,
so
that
you're-
would be referencing the board, and that will be another question for Shayna as to why that language is within there.
So Anna, I'm happy to send these questions out to Shayna and get her response for you, and we can bring that back in our next board meeting and answer those questions for you.
Okay, and then between the two, the student anti-harassment policy 5517 and the employee anti-harassment policy 3362. And I noticed that in the employee one, there was a lot of talk about grooming and things like that. How come that, is there a reason why that's not included in the student anti-harassment policy? I feel like students should also be aware of what grooming looks like and the other terms that are used within the employee policy.
Well, some of the grooming conversations would be handled in our student code of conduct and dress code, but we also need to be mindful as well of some of the students that don't have access. And so we want to make sure that we're providing students that may not be coming to schools in a way that is maybe not, that would cause some teasing or harassment itself, that we address those from a proactive approach and provide them and dive deep into those cases, case by cases. And if they need a place to become more, I don't want to use the word grooming, but a physical appearance that might be altered because of something at home, we wanted to provide them that alternative versus looking at a consequential aspect or some sort of something like that. And so I know in the past we've dealt with that in student services, that we provide opportunities for students to groom or become whatever that might look like, but we also address some of the clothing aspect through our code of conduct and dress code policies as well.
And Ann, we can check into that. I think these are all good questions that are raised, that we can have staff take that back and take a look at the questions that you've raised tonight.
Okay.
Do you have any, are there any other questions? Do any other board members have questions with respect to the motion on the floor?
And thank you for reviewing that in great detail. Appreciate that.
So we have a motion on the floor. All those in favor with aye?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion is approved. We will now move into revision of Title IX policy.
This one is new. In May of this spring, federal government updated the Title IX regulations. The policy that we have in front of you, it would be a new Title IX regulation update that goes over Title IX investigations as it pertains to school and employees as well. And so we've attached this this policy that we're bringing forward for approval. This one was provided to us by Neola as well when we're looking at this. It includes sexual harassment definitions, as well as it does also identify Title IX coordinators and a very specific investigation policy and procedure that we're looking to have to follow this upcoming school year. And so we're looking and it's got to be, we're looking to approve it today in terms of that it does go into effect this week. That looking at, because of the fact that it's going into effect this week. So it is a lengthy policy, so I'm open for dialogue later on here. We're learning this as well as everybody else, as the new regulations, both Beth and I, as we're navigating this. But looking to approve the attached board policy 2266 Title IX regulations as presented.
Do I have a motion?
Move to approve.
Motion by Ebel. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Wade. Any discussion or questions? All those in favor with aye?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thanks, Caleb.
Thank you, Vic. Thank you.
We will move into item 10, General A, reopening of schools discussion.
I gave my report as relates to the status of our intent to reopen schools to date. This is an opportunity for the board to discuss issues related to the reopening of schools. I also have my cabinet here that would be ready and available for any questions that you may have of them.
So I'll open it up for questions from the board.
I had a couple questions. Can I
Sure,
ask
go
them?
ahead, G.
In talking to some of the teachers, and I talked to some of the guys out out by the sidewalk here, some of the concerns that they mentioned to me was the plan as it exists is and I know this is inevitable, but they said it's short on details. But they all realize too that the details for them exist in what happens in their room. Where does this table go? How do we move this? What protective devices we need there? And the school board wouldn't be involved in that. I mean, I think that would be a school level decision or even room level decision. But they were worried because there's 1,000 what if questions you can ask and you won't have the answer to all of them. They're also concerned about input into the plan, reopening plan from teachers. But they also know that, you have to have the plan first and then you fill in the details as you go, and that the teachers are probably responsible for what happens in their classrooms. With that all said, I know they have 3 days before they start teaching, most of the teachers, or the K4 and 7th grade and 10th grade start right away. Is that right?
We actually have more time this year. Normally we have 3 days of professional development. This year they'll have 7.
For most teachers. Some will only have 3 days.
No, all will have 7.
Okay, really?
Yep.
Okay.
We backed school off a week.
But they're, okay, so even the kindergarten teachers, K4s and the 7th graders and the 10th graders, those teachers will also have the 7 days. Okay, well, that takes up my other question.
If I just can add to that, and Corey would have a lot more detailed, we had discussion, about a month ago, and the issue of teacher preparation was a big deal. And I think it was either Corey or Connie or both who suggested that we start school a little bit later so we can have more time for professional development. We understand that this year, for teachers stepping into day one is like no other year that they've had. In terms of their feedback and input, the plan itself is really, that was presented and approved by the board, is really a very general, big picture plan. That is not unlike most plans in the state of Wisconsin. They really are somewhat similar. We're either going to be all e-learning, we're going to have blended, it's very similar. Now the work with the staff will start. We had our first leadership meeting last Thursday. I believe the elementary principals got together, secondary principals got together, an opportunity to visit and sit in part of those meetings. That went well. From that, there was a level of excitement. There were also a lot of other questions that came up. Each building principal will be now responsible to go back with their leadership teams, and that'll look different from one building to the next, to start diving into what does this really mean now at Jefferson Elementary School. Because, we have some general guidelines and whatnot for everyone, but Jefferson Elementary School, in terms of how we deal with the logistics of everything, might look different than McKinley. There will be extensive staff involvement with that, and as Corey said, rather than 3 days, we have 7 days to do so.
And then they have that time to put their room in order and things like that.
They'll have time to get their room in order, to set the protocols for social distancing. We'll have to remove items. There'll be a number of things to do. There'll also be collaboration time with their colleagues. We've made it very clear that administratively, we aren't going to tie them up with all kinds of requirements for professional development that's not related to their classroom today.
Good, so they can come, being rest assured they'll have the time to get ready for COVID, and that includes adjusting their lessons and stuff, which they're probably doing all summer because they know what's coming up. Because you can't just roll out your curriculum in a couple days with the, adjusting to COVID.
When you use the term rest assured, that's pretty strong. We've increased the
That's
days
the
from
harshest thing I've ever said.
We've increased from 3 to 7. I can say they don't need less. Could you argue, is that enough? We then have students that'll be coming in incrementally as well after that.
And then another question I had, I've been talking to some teachers, elementary teachers, that are saying they have 28 on their rolls in their classroom. And I'm thinking, that's a lot in one room. We've all been in rooms where there are 28, 29, 30 kids, and it's crowded on the best of days. I'm hoping that at the building level, principals will be working closely with those teachers to identify spaces where they can space out, maybe have a subset of the classroom running in the hallway or in the gym class or something, and that those teachers specifically would receive EAs to be helping them out to make sure that classrooms with higher enrollments have an EA that works with that teacher.
Absolutely, G. We're monitoring those numbers really, really closely. We're also looking at each classroom and how many students in that classroom have signed up for e-learning. Because while they may have had 28, there could be 7 that have signed up for e-learning, which would take that then down to 21. But then we're also, once people get back into the buildings, we're gonna have to maybe move some classrooms. So if we've got a classroom with more students and maybe they're in a smaller room, we may need to put them in a larger space, or we may need to still split some rooms and utilize some of the staff within the building as best we can. So we're watching those numbers every day, and we'll continue to monitor, and we'll add additional staff or repurpose and reassign staff as we need to.
That one of the most asked questions I got from elementary teachers was, am I going to have to teach in the classroom and do online learning at the same time? Which is, as we all know, that's double duty. That's tough. It was hard doing online learning. So are we able to identify the teachers that are saying they have pre-existing conditions and can't come in for that reason, that they can be redirected?
That sounds like a really easy fix, but it's not that easy, because if we do that, then that teacher that may have been a 3rd grade teacher, now we've got to take that teacher's students and put them into other classrooms, which would increase the numbers again, and we wouldn't be able to distance. So that was the reason why we gave the Wednesday off, to help plan and prepare for those e-learning lessons. Because at any point in time, we may need to have a classroom switch to e-learning, we may need to have a building switch to e-learning, or even the entire district. So it will be more work, but we've provided time to do that. We're gonna do something similar to what we did last spring. We're gonna identify those power standards, and we're gonna work together collaboratively within buildings and across the district to share that workload. And again, we need to be able to have students transition in and out. If families decide that they want to do e-learning for the entire year, and we're trying to determine exactly how many that is, we may take a staff member that's not able to come in and reassign that staff member to just those full year e-learning students.
It really depends on grade levels. Those that are choosing, are they Are they choosing for the entire year, as Corey said? Do they think they want to start but likely will come in? How many per grade? How many per building? Until we get all of that information, it's difficult to determine. And of course, that's one of the reasons we're increasing the number of days of prep, so we can prepare for that. And again, we can reassign or assign, as Corey said, staff members that may not be able to come in for health conditions. We also, quite frankly, might have to hire some more staff. You know, we all understand what a fund balance is. It's money in, money out. It's operational money. It's not a rainy day fund. That said, we have a crisis. We have a very strong fund balance, and if there was ever a crisis in public education, we're sitting in it right now. So we may come back to the board over time, maybe next month in September, and say, this is where we're at. We need to hire this many teachers right now to make it through COVID-19. Knowing that what a fund balance is a one-time expenditure. And that's what we're looking at, hopefully, because hopefully next year we're not in this situation, and that would then qualify these as one-time expenditures. I'm willing to do that. I'm willing to come to the board and say, we've got to dip into our fund balance. I've never said that in my career, because I believe it's that important that we get children back in school this year. Safely.
No kidding.
And we're also in a situation right now where I think locally we're recognizing that we can't wait to find out from the state what additional funds they're going to provide schools, or from the federal government at this point in time. I mean, we need to be making those decisions on a local level. That's just the reality of where we're at right now. There's a very strong chance that we will not be hearing any definition from the state until after the election. And the federal government, you know, we all know right now that there aren't any decisions that have been made recently.
Okay, well, I just asked, just this last bit, I don't want to say anymore, but to make sure that our, you know, I think the high school, the 7th through 12th grade is a pretty nice arrangement. You know, there's adequate time to plan and good organization there with half-size classes and things like that. We've done a little bit for the elementary teachers by having Wednesday as their work day, but it hasn't done a lot, you know. I just hope that we can identify classes that are, say, over 20, and principals can go to work like day one and figure out how we can do that, and I imagine they will, you know. Anything we can do for the K through 6 situation right now. Also, we can make sure Wednesday isn't taken up with meetings. Okay, good.
Actually, we are even putting together our PD plan for the year, and Connie and I have had lots of conversation about no one is in any place to learn a lot of new stuff. We are in survival mode, so we just need to give teachers the time to do their job and to work. So that's going to be our focus for all of our PD days for the year.
Thank you.
So I've got a couple of questions. So kind of going off of what G had stated about teachers, do we know in each grade level how many teachers have experience teaching in other subjects that they're currently teaching? So for example, I know that, you know, FIAD teachers, music teachers, art teachers, their space may be utilized because we have too many students to be putting in a smaller classroom. But say these teachers have experience teaching in another subject, is there any options for them to take on other roles for e-learning purposes? And what options, if any, are we providing our teachers? You know, what if they don't have a medical exemption, but they really just don't feel comfortable coming into this, coming back and teaching in this school? Because I'll be honest with you, I'm looking at the last 7 days or the last 6 days worth of COVID updates from the Portage County Health Center. And as Craig stated, today we're up at 420, that's up 31. And I'll take that into consideration saying, yeah, that was over the weekend too, because it's not updated over the weekend. So that's more of a Saturday, Sunday up until 2 o'clock on the 10th. But then if we look, there's consistently a positive case within the county. We haven't really had any days where we've had none. So the numbers are going up, the numbers are going down, but we haven't had a consistency where we have had 0 positive cases, even if it was 2 or 3 days straight. So my concern is talking to community members and teachers is, I don't have a medical exemption, but what are my options? You know, I'm not comfortable going back into my classroom and teaching. What can I do? What options do I have? Or do I just lose my job? Because I don't want to lose our educators. I don't want to lose our staff that we have here. What we have is really great, and I think that this is a hard thing for the cabinet. And I'm not saying you all are doing a great job with everything that's going on, but these are questions that are coming up. And, you know, it's really, what are my options? What can I do? I know that, you know, there's going to be medical exemptions, and then we talk about the use of face masks. But how do we mandate the face masks to ensure our teachers and other students and family members so that that we are doing everything that we can to prevent it? But going back to, what options do teachers have if they don't have a medical exemption?
First of all, there was a number of questions and comments in there. Yes, the numbers in Portage County have been going up. It's difficult to look, however, at just that one data point. To look at the positives, you need to take a look at the percentage of positive cases in comparison to the percentage of negative cases for us to get the real picture there. But that said, our numbers are going up. I have a meeting tomorrow morning again with public health and the various superintendents in Portage County, and we have these discussions as it relates to going back to the metrics. What metrics do we have in terms of giving us the information that we think that we need to say we can't move forward as in terms of face-to-face. And I don't want to speak for the county, however, I have heard the county state that they're waiting for that guidance from the state of Wisconsin to all of the counties. Whether it's a percentage or whether it's a number, we're all looking for that. What barometer, where do we reach a benchmark, if I may, that says we can't go to school or we have to close the school? That isn't, that's very subjective right now. And quite frankly, it's going to depend on a number of issues as it relates to how large the building is, how many positive tests there may be. But I think more importantly, substitute availability. But more importantly, we will be looking at what's the capacity for substitutes, what's the capacity for bus drivers. You know, we can keep shuffling around bus drivers. To what extent do we say we can no longer transport students? Though that's not an exact science. The same thing with food service. If we have a couple food service positive cases that might result in closing a kitchen, we can probably move, produce food in one building, move it to another building. How often can you do that before we no longer can have school? That isn't, that's very subjective. We're hoping to have more guidance as it relates to the state, to the counties regarding that. The issue of students or staff that don't feel comfortable or that have indicated to us that they cannot return to school, Beth, is approximately how many?
We have 19 teachers and 4 EAs.
Okay, so we have 19 teachers and 4 EAs out of 1,000 staff members. That's extremely low. We will accommodate every employee that has a health condition. and deal with that on a one-on-one basis. Those that are concerned or have indicated they're fearful of coming to school, we'll deal with those on an individual basis. And quite frankly, I don't know what the outcome of that would be. I don't want to speak on behalf of Beth. That'll be an HR issue. That'll be an issue that Beth obviously will consult with me on, as well as our legal counsel. At the end of the day, it's potential, however, if we believe somebody should be at school and they don't have a medical reason, it's very potential they'll have to make a very serious decision or they may get terminated. That's the reality of where we're at in this world. There are people that are going to work every single day that don't want to go because they're fearful, but they have to because they're essential workers. We have police officers and firefighters and doctors and nurses that are going to work because they have to. We have people that work at Quick Trip every single day, and they run into 500 random people off the streets every day. They're fearful of their jobs as well. It's an unfortunate situation. We will, however, work with every one of our employees and analyze their decision or their issue on an individual basis. Beth?
And I would just add that we've had food service workers come to work every single day, as well as bus drivers, many of who are very uncomfortable doing so.
In the front line.
Yes.
Oh, but they're not in with 25 kids either.
No, they're not, and of course, herein lies, some of the controversy that I don't know if I'd necessarily want to get into. Students are not getting this disease nearly at the rate that adults are.
Except over 100,000 have gotten COVID in the last 2 weeks of July. That was just on the news tonight. That's a substantial, out of 300,000 kids over the term of this virus.
Yeah,
That's a lot.
I'm not sure how, I don't understand the 100,000 compared to the 300. Could you explain
There's
that?
been 300,000 cases of children getting COVID in the United States. 100,000 of those have been in the last 2 weeks.
I'll take that at face value. And I don't have a comment to that. We know that in this pandemic, people will get this disease. We know that. That said, there isn't a person in this room and listening to that's interested in anyone getting sick, much less dying.
I need a clarification on the elementary teachers. If I have 25 kids in my classroom and 5 of them choose to go online, am I teaching the face-to-face kids and those online kids? Are they still all my students? Am I preparing 2 different sets of lessons?
So Barb, those logistics and details will be worked out once our staff get back and once grade level teams get together and we know the exact numbers. So it could be that a grade level team decides that each of them want to keep their own students and do the e-learning, or they may say, let's have one of our teachers at our grade level be responsible for maybe doing the e-learning reading, and maybe another teacher will do the e-learning math. We also know that we've got some staff that can't come back to work for medical reasons, and we may reassign those teachers to help with the e-learning also. So we're still working on all of those logistics. But yes, Teachers will have some responsibility, but what that exactly looks like, we're still figuring out.
And secondary kids our secondary staff, they will not have any online because they'll be in the online learning center? Is that accurate?
Connie is on and she can respond to this. We have the online learning center for students at the secondary level that are in e-learning on a more full-time basis, but secondary staff will be responsible for e-learning lessons also, just like elementary.
About it last spring, all of our secondary teachers put their classrooms virtually. And that's what they did for a full e-learning experience. This fall, we are still asking our teachers to put their classrooms virtually. It's just that 2 days of the week, you're going to get to see those kids face to face to do some reteaching, some individualized support discussions, and perhaps labs. The reason our secondary teachers are in a pretty good position, having used Schoology for several years now, that their classroom is virtual. But if my child has a health condition and I'm not interested in doing the online learning center, which is a different curriculum, it's not the SPASH program. But if my child has a health condition and I'm not really ready to send my child back for obvious reasons, and I'm not ready for my child to give up his or her SPASH schedule, that child just won't come to those face-to-face sessions, but will still be participating in that virtual classroom. Bart, did that help answer that question? Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Can you also address the question that came up in public comments about passing time and social distancing?
That's a great question. And we have talked from the get-go with Portage County Health and Human Services that in our secondary buildings, even when we split our student body in half, we still will have 700 kids at SPASH, 300 kids at PJ, and 400 kids at Ben Franklin. We're really confident that when they're in the classroom, those classroom sizes, which can average 20 to 26 to 30, are going to be cut in half. And we can social distance in those classrooms during that 46 or 51-minute period of instruction. But yes, when kids are passing in the hallways, they have 4 minutes to get to their next class. And the Portage County Health and Human Services have said that when kids are masked and they're not in groups for 15 minutes, and they're not in groups sitting, congregating for 15 more minutes, that our plan is the best that a plan could be when we're breaking our big secondary schools in half. So can we guarantee, we are gonna have to do a really good job of educating our students. They're gonna have to keep their masks on. They have 4 to 5 minutes in between passing. They don't have that 15 minutes to congregate in between school. Our hardest times will be at lunch, before and after school, to be honest with you.
Are you going to have one hallways or anything like that?
I'm sorry, Barb, say that again, please.
Are you going to have one-way hallways or anything like that?
Our principals are working on that, and yep, they're actually working on, are they going to have one-way, again, the kids in general, when you take our student body in half, that will open up significant spaces, but our kids are going to still need to be moving.
How are we mandating the mask?
I'm sorry, Ed, could you repeat that?
Yep, how are we mandating the usage of masks in the buildings by the students and staff?
Yes, we are. All employees are mandated to wear masks, unless they're doing what we are right now, and the order allows for that. But regardless of the order, we would allow for that as well. If you are in a position within a classroom as a staff member and you're teaching, and you are socially distancing yourself from your students, as I am right now, I can take my mask off and involve myself in instruction. Students are also mandated to wear masks. We made that decision last week before we sent out our plan details prior to the governor issuing his order. And that was the biggest issue that we've been talking about since March. And at the end of the day, I think, Connie, you said a couple weeks ago, if we need to put every mask on every child and mandate that to get the confidence of our parents to send their children to school, let's do that. So we made the decision to do so. Now, that said, there will be times during the day that people in general, including students, won't be wearing their masks. They have to eat. They have to drink water. So there will be times that they need to take their mask off. However, yes, they will be required. Students, obviously, if they have health conditions, we will require, as well as staff will require medical documentation. We have talked with our legal counsel. We have the authority to do that. Students that refuse to wear their masks, that don't have a legitimate health condition, will be asked to leave the building and come back when they have one. And if they're not interested in doing that, they'll be assigned to e-learning. We also have legal counsel that states that we have that authority as well.
Okay, and so if a student or students are being teased because they are taking this serious and they choose to be in school for wearing a mask, would that fall into one of the harassment policies?
It likely would, Ann, but everyone's going to have them on.
Okay, but I'm just saying, because I can tell you right now, my boys don't want to wear a mask when they're in school because they're already being teased by other folks that they're wearing a mask when we go out in public. And so being in school and being around friends is not going to help that.
But the people teasing them will be wearing a mask as well.
In front of staff, in front of employees, but whether it's going to, as soon as, what I'm getting at is I can see students saying, I'm 6 feet from you, I can take off my mask, or running up to you, saying something, and then putting the mask on real quick, running away, giving that 6 feet distance, taking it off. So there's a lot of things that I see that, mandate. I like that we are mandating a mask requirement in the schools. You talked about disciplinary actions, but I'm really worried about, there's so many staff that are going to be in the buildings. And, now we're going to have staff who are now not just have to do e-learning, but they are going to be in masks themselves. They're going to be responsible for looking for students with or without masks on. So there's just a lot more things that are going to be on educators and staff's shoulders. And so when we're talking about disciplinary actions with not wearing the mask, I'm really just worried that, it's not going to be taken serious, because I've already seen the backlash. Like, I'm sending my child and they are not going to be wearing a mask. And we're saying, okay, so our disciplinary action is to send them home. If they do it again, send them home. And if they refuse to wear a mask, we put them in e-learning. But is that going to be all across the board? And how many times are they going to be warned? You have to have your mask on. It's a mandate. Before we say, I'm sorry, you have to go to e-learning at this point in time.
That's going to be a work in progress. I'm not sure I'm understanding everything you're saying. We understand that having children and students wear masks is going to be a challenge, and policing that's going to be difficult. It's also an issue depending on age groups. Elementary students will be challenging because they're elementary students, and my goodness gracious, at the end of the day, they could be sharing them. Who knows? Because they're young children. Middle school children are middle school children. We deal with middle school issues all the time. High school issues tend to be a little bit more concerning as it relates to the age of the child, but I can say that during elementary or during our summer school, very few kids wore masks because they didn't feel comfortable. By the end of summer school, many kids were wearing masks because they were more comfortable. I can say that I have been out and about in Stevens Point, and when I go into a store, obviously there's a mandate, but even prior to the governor's order, more and more people were simply wearing masks. It's as simple as that. We are mandating masks. Will there be opportunities where students can take their mask off? I certainly hope so. If we have an algebra class at SPASH and students are 6 feet apart and there's a 50-minute class, there should be the ability to take that mask off. The governor's order right now does not allow that. So I'm hoping there's some tweaks, but in terms of not wearing the mask, I have masks like everyone does everywhere. There are times when I walk out of my office and go to the bathroom, which is 20 yards, and I stop and I go back because I forgot my mask. I'll come in a room and I'll see one of my colleagues with the mask on. I just forgot it. It's not because I won't wear it. I apologize. That's happening. We're all learning how and when to use our mask appropriately, and that's not going to happen overnight. So I understand the issues as it relates to the difficulty of wearing masks. However, the students that are going to be making fun of others for doing so are required to wear the masks themselves, and yes, our principals and our teachers are going to have to spend some time monitoring that. That said, the person that comes in and says, I don't have to wear a mask because my dad said this is a bunch of crap. Well, there's the door. Sign up for e-learning. We know that this is going to be an issue. We also know that we could get some students at the secondary level that typically don't like enjoying coming to school, but all of this is going to make it fun because we can stir the pot a little bit. We know we're going to be dealing with that. We can find and talk about, as we need to, many, many reasons why we can't make this happen, because there's a lot of them out there. And at the end of the day, quite frankly, maybe it's not going to happen. But until somebody from the state or the county says, Craig, we don't recommend you doing this, we're going to work on how can we make this happen and what do we need to do internally to make this successful. Knowing, and there are going to be scenarios that we won't even recognize today or tomorrow. We won't recognize them until it happens when kids come to school.
So who's providing face masks, or would that be the family's responsibility?
The Department of Public Instruction has supplied 2 masks per student for every student in the state of Wisconsin. We have thousands of face masks that we've purchased. We are going to expect family members. Some kids are going to come with their own mask on. We see everybody, with their own decorated masks. I've got a school mask. I've got very plain masks. Kids will be wearing their own because they're going to choose to. We're prepared for kids that lose them within each classroom. We're prepared for bus drivers to have a stockpile for the student that forgets it. We also have a number of community organizations that are making them, and we are constantly looking at how can we continue to purchase masks, because we know these rip, we know they get lost, we know they get stepped on. So that said, they will be issued 2 from the state. We have some ourselves, but if this goes all year long, and quite frankly, I'm surprised if it won't, we're going to have to continue having conversations about supplying masks.
Will there be education on the importance of not switching masks with our K through 6?
Yes, that'll be a part of the in-servicing at the beginning of the year with all of our staff.
And then in regards to hand sanitizer and sanitizing wipes, will they be readily available in the classrooms to our teachers and to other staff in the district? or will that be the responsibility of families buying additional if needed, or that responsibility would that fall back on the teachers if they're out?
We are stockpiling, not that we won't accept donations. Because we've got we have many school districts throughout our country ordering the same stuff. And we've been ordering since March when this started, just to stockpile, if I may. We also have our custodians have an appropriate, for the lack of better term, recipe of ingredients that we actually make our own, and we put them into our own containers if need be.
So we've been stockpiling since March. Have we looked at any of the hand sanitizers to see if they were on the list of recalls?
No.
B&G, I'm sure did that.
I can't answer that, but B&G is responsible for that, and they look at every chemical that comes into our building, regardless of COVID-19.
Beth, I have a question for you. Last time I asked about workers' comp, and you said that was a gray area. Can you give any further information on that?
Yes, my understanding is workers' comp would apply if it can be proven that the exposure or the person who contracted COVID-19 happened at work. So that will be difficult to prove, but that would be the circumstances under which workers' comp would cover it.
Okay. I could go with questions all night. I know you don't want me to. Are fans provided? Are fans okay to use?
That's a really good question, Barb. That came up at leadership team, and we have it on our cabinet meeting tomorrow to discuss. So we're going to come up with an expectation on that and share with staff.
Okay. What about educator effectiveness and standardized testing? And what has DPI said about those things?
Nothing to date. We're waiting.
Okay. I'll be done for now.
What are we allowing face shields in lieu of face masks, or if they're wearing a face shield, we would also require a face mask?
No, the governor's order does not include. We were in our information that we sent out last week, disclosing the phases of our plan. We use the term face coverings to include masks or shields. The governor's order specifically does not include shields. There's another tweak that I would like to see. I'm not sure it will. I think in theory, when you speak, the droplets could go down below the shield. You can wear the shield, yes you can, but you have to, in addition to that, wear a mask.
There are some new masks that are clear, and we've ordered some of those to see how they work. So they are similar to the shield, but they're a mask that's got a clear front on them.
There likely will be more to come on what's appropriate as it relates to face coverings, because they have to be comfortable, and if we can get something that can expose one's face as a teacher, that would be extremely valuable in many situations.
Okay, I lied. I have one more question, but I just thought of the Catholic schools are starting up August 25th. Are we providing transportation for them, or are they on their own now?
You know what? We didn't talk about that. My understanding of state statute, though, we're required to provide transportation for private schools. Tom?
Yes, we are.
Yeah, we are.
There you go.
Yes, we will be.
Thank you.
So I just want to go back a little bit on what y'all said earlier when I made the comment about what if teachers are uncomfortable about coming back and it was 19 teachers and 4 EAs. Worst comes to worst, and 23 of these staff are saying, I'm putting in my notice, I'm not going to put myself at risk. Do we have enough substitute teachers to replace the 19? And then what do we do about the 4 EA positions in a worst
I think
scenario?
I think that's a little premature. I know that Beth has already talked with several of those staff members, and we have plans that we are actively working on. I'm confident for the majority of our staff in those situations, we will be able to accommodate because we have other needs as it relates to e-learning. At the end of the day, we may have a staff member that says, I don't like any of the above, and then we'll have to cross that bridge.
And have we had discussions with substitute teachers? You know, I know Wausau's not open. I'm not sure yet about Rapids, but in the event that we are in need of substitute teachers in this area, do we know if we would have enough to cover for staff who may not be able to teach for a few days, whether they're sick, you know, or if they have to self-quarantine?
No, we don't know that. Truth be told, we've had a substitute shortage in public education for many years. I believe that Wausau is the only school district right now in central Wisconsin, and I could be wrong on that, that has disclosed that they will begin the year virtual. And I was on our CISA 5 meeting last week, which would be about 35, 40 school districts. We're the northernmost school district. Portage is the southernmost school district. I believe every one of those school districts, and I could be wrong, are all going into some blended model like we are. I know Rapids' model is very similar to ours. Tomorrow Rivers is very similar to ours. Marshfield's very similar to ours. DC Everest, very similar to ours. Now, if we all have an issue with substitutes and we're drawing off the same pool of substitutes, we could have a problem. That comes down to the ability to, to sustain this. That could shut schools down. Yes, it could. We might find that we don't have enough substitutes because not only are we having an issue, but our surrounding communities are. And then we'll have to make the decisions of that. And therein lies what our model allows us to do. If we begin school and we find out that we have a number of positive issues here, cases, excuse me, it's been a long day, that we may have to make a decision to close schools. But doggone it, let's not close schools before we start and find that out, because maybe that isn't an issue. We may be moving teachers around. It goes under the category, in my opinion, that we are better serving the majority of our children if we can get them in a classroom in front of a teacher. And there are many reasons why we might not be able to do that, and that's one of them. And we won't know it until that time comes.
And one last question. Is FIED still going to be in session, or is FIED going to be canceled? I'm asking because of if we're mandating students and staff to wear masks, and if they're in FIED and they're doing different activities, how that would affect their time or, their activities in FIED.
So at the elementary level, we are going to continue with FIED. We are going to encourage gym teachers to take students outdoors as much as possible. If they have to remain in the gym, if they're doing an activity like running, they can remove their mask. But if they're doing stretching or some other activity that doesn't emulate running, then they will be required to wear their masks.
Okay. Thanks.
Meg, can I just ask a question?
Yeah.
So I, first of all, just want to applaud all of the communication. I just, and you've heard me say this a million times, I just don't think that you can over-communicate. So I appreciate the webinars. Please keep doing that. And I appreciate you posting those. I've noticed just a ton going out on Facebook. Just keep up the communication. I really appreciate that for our staff as well as all of our parents. So that's terrific. I just wanted to comment on that and continue to encourage that. I had a question, and maybe this is a dumb question. August 17th is the last date for people to sign up for e-learning, right?
August 17th, we're asking people if they think that's the decision that they'll be making, that they can let us know. We are not putting a hard deadline on that because I can see a scenario where, I'll use my family as an example, right? I have a son who has had some medical history, right? Perhaps we get 2 weeks into this, I don't feel as comfortable. I would like the option, and I think parents and families should have the option to still say, you know what, I thought I was okay with this, I'm really not okay with this, I want to move into e-learning. For planning purposes, knowing that as Corey and her teams and principals and teachers are saying, how many students are in my classroom and what does that look like? If families know that this is where they want their student to start the year or to move full-time, we're asking that they can let us know by the 17th. So families will be allowed to move into e-learning. What we are asking on the back end of that for sanity is that they are only allowed to re-enter at quarter, so that we don't have students moving, you know, okay, I'm gonna do a week this way, and then I'm gonna come back in the classroom, and then I'm doing another week here. So that's not a hard deadline. Families can still opt into e-learning after that. We're just asking again for planning ahead of staff coming back. We wanna be able to give them the best information possible, and we need families to help us do that.
Well, here's my next question. Oh, first day of school has been pushed back to September 8th, right? So from August 17th to September 8th, you guys are going to have to do some incredible math magic to figure out where teachers are going and how many kids are going to be doing e-learning, how many kids are going to be doing in the classroom, and so forth. I mean, that's going to be a huge amount of figuring out who goes where. I guess I would encourage you to have a hard date for turning that in, because honestly, I don't know how I don't know how each of the individual schools are going to be able to figure out where kids are going until that date is, And frankly, I think that's not an unreasonable request. I would not hesitate, if I were you, to just simply say, okay, you know, we encourage you to have this information in by August 17th, but we demand that it be in by, you know, whatever date you come up with. Because that's some really complicated decisions that have to be made. And then when you factor that in with, we've got teachers that have said, I have a health issue, I want to stay out of the classroom, then you have to try to match all that up. And I just want to ask, and this is the dumb question part, did we have a group decision about moving the first day back to September 8th? I don't remember voting on that, and normally we vote on the calendar. Normally we vote on every little change in the calendar. So I actually applaud that, moving it back, because I think everybody needs that little bit of extra time to figure things out. And once we get started, boy, the roller coaster begins. And, you know, I'm just amazed at how you guys are pulling this together. And as every single new question comes up, you're figuring out an answer. I really applaud the program that has come up. And I got to tell you, I've talked to a lot of parents who have said to me, I just can't wait to get my kids back into school. This is how they need to learn. And so this is going to be a roller coaster. This is going to be hard. But you guys are doing a great job of, you know, figuring out the steps as we go forward. So anyway, thank you for doing that.
And I will say that isn't a dumb question at all. In terms of this school year, the calendar remains the same. The reality is what's happening within our buildings over the course of this year is gonna change. It's what happened last fall. So to the extent we are starting school at the same time, we are working to configure what that means.
I understand. I just
by
didn't
day.
remember voting on it.
Yeah, no.
And
You
that-
didn't. The recommendation came at cabinet from a number of cabinet members that we need to do two things. We need to increase professional planning time for our teachers, and we need to gradually bring our students back to school. And of course, that was supported by Gary Garsky. The more we can push stuff back and bring students back in smaller numbers, the greater chance we can succeed at keeping there. And I looked at the cabinet and said, well, let's just do this then.
At the first Portage County Business Council meeting, where we provided a presentation, I think there were around 120
Yeah.
people that were on that call. One of the questions that was asked was, is the school going to provide orientation for our students who we typically are bringing, our 10th graders at SPASH? I mean, our 7th graders at Ben. How are you going to do that? And we kind of looked at each other and said, well, how are we? So that's, again, the wonderful thing is that with the communication out, there's so many questions that come back. And we've known that throughout this, that we have so many questions. And the more those questions are asked, the ability to create the answers to best support our school communities in the best way possible. And so that's another part of that, floating, is to allow for that ability to orient some kids moving in to our buildings this is gonna be their new school. Jeff?
Yeah, I have a question. Looking at, you had three basic models for returning to school. Obviously, the first choice would have been go to school as normal. Second was the blended learning, and then the e-learning. And it sure looks like blended learning is a lot more work and a lot more money, a lot more effort than the other two options. Have you looked at how e-learning would impact our staffing and budget if we had to go to e-learning, or if we decided to?
I'd really have to think about that, Jeff. I'm not sure. Yeah, you're probably right. Blended learning, trying to get our children back to school is probably going to be more expensive than all e-learning. The easy decision for me as superintendent is to say, throw the towel in, Gerlach, let's all go e-learning. It's easy for me. And it's probably going to cost less. And we are going to have 75% of our public ticked off at us, just like what happened in Wausau on Saturday. The hard thing to do is make difficult decisions based on what's best, even if it costs a little bit more money, and knowing it's going to be much more challenging. The decision for me to go to e-learning is easy. But for staff to think that they could be e-learning all year long, I get emails from both sides from staff. I can't believe you're considering this to get me back in the classroom. I want nothing to do with e-learning. And so I believe children are better off in a structured school environment with a teacher in the classroom. I think thinking that we can instruct students via e-learning. Give you an example, 2nd grade reading. I'm not a reading teacher. I'm not an expert with technology. I know 2nd graders. I had a couple myself at some time 20 years ago. I couldn't fathom having my children try to be taught reading at home when I'm working. I don't know what that would look like. So the easy decision would be to do that. For parents, it would not be it would be a very difficult decision because they'll be making choices as it relates to who's going to be home with their kids, or do I go to work? And how is a parent, when I don't understand education, as a parent, do I teach my child how to read? So I think the answer to that, and without going on my soapbox, yes, blended learning costs more than e-learning, and if this is about money, and we want to go to e-learning, easy decision. I wouldn't support it, but it would be, you can make that decision. I just don't support giving blended learning, giving face-to-face learning a chance. Because we may open up the schools and we may in a couple of weeks say, you know what, this is working well. And we're going to continue to move forward. We could open up schools and within a week we could be 100% e-learning. Yes, that could happen. And there'll be plenty of people waiting at my door to see it. Yeah, told you so, Gerlach. But doggone it, I'm going to keep fighting the fight about getting kids back in our classrooms because that's where they need to be. And if something happens between now and then or during that particular point in time, we'll make decisions to pull back, whether it be completely go to e-learning before school starts because the county or the state says we don't support this. I'm going to listen to that. Right now they're saying we support this. That could change. But until a higher authority tells me that we can't do this, I'm moving forward because I believe it's best for kids.
Okay, just a quick question, and I'm sure you aren't sure, and maybe Beth knows. Talking to a friend who's in a different district said they were going to total e-learning virtual, and they were going to start losing staff because they don't need, and they're planning actually maybe 6 months of this, and they're going to start losing people because there are a lot of positions that we don't need when you're e-learning. Is that a reality if you went totally e-learning?
Well, of course it is. It depends on one. If we started the school with e-learning last year, through my recommendation, you as a school board were very generous supporting our support staff financially. This happened in March. The shoe fell. There was a crisis. We didn't know what was going on. And we had people that were losing their jobs left and right. And we did the right thing. We supported our staff through that difficult time. If we start this year e-learning, I don't know if we ever get back in the schools. I don't know how we justify transportation support staff. How do we have 250 EAs. What are we going to do with them?
I know.
Now, yes, we will be able to use several because we'll still have issues that we're going to have to deal with. That's the reality. And you want to talk about a difficult decision that I'll have to make? To potentially lay off a significant amount of our staff? This is for real, folks.
So
these decisions, every single one of them, have serious ramifications.
So I really appreciate, because I know, having been in this district, this is my 16th year, and I really appreciate having hired a superintendent who has hired such professionals in this district and all the work. I really think it's important. I have a niece who has a 2-year-old and had to go to daycare with a mask. I have a brother-in-law who is a physician, and he is in infectious diseases in a major Chicago hospital and has to see hundreds and hundreds of cases all the time. So the one thing that I know from everyone who's gone through this, we've all gone through this, is there aren't any guarantees at all. And everything is unknown because it changes all the time. And this is due to a virus. It's not due to people not necessarily knowing what to do. But I have a tremendous amount of respect for what's going on and the worry. I have a son who's a teacher who's worried with a new grandson. I understand a lot of this, but I also understand, having worked with a number of different boards and superintendents in that, when I look at the last 5 or 6 years, and I actually made a little note of it, and I'll go really quick. The things that have happened in this district, settling of contracts, the strategic plan, 2 major referendums, the virtual learning with the 10 snow days, raises for our employees. When I look at the people who have put all of those things together, and this board did not do the work, they asked questions, they were part of it, but they approved all of this work. So as hard as some of these questions are, there's going to be all kinds of questions again and again, and you keep answering them and you keep moving, and I really, really appreciate that. I really appreciate all the work that's going on. People not taking their vacations because they know reopening of schools coming, and they need to be here to make sure that happens in the safest, best way possible. So I just want to say thank you to the staff. They're amazing professionals, and I feel really good about being part of this district. So I just wanted to say thank you.
Thank you. I may note that the successes that we've enjoyed over the last 4, now going on 5 years, was very much a collective approach between board, administration, and our staff.
I do know, Craig, that some of our teachers have started to apply in neighboring districts to do the online teaching. And I would really hate to lose those folks. I hope they'll stick with us.
Barb, that's true. I also know that there are families that are open enrolling from another school district that's virtual because they want their kids in school. This is going to go back and forth. Wait till athletics start, and some districts might have it and some might not have it. You're going to have a whole nother level of issue. But Barb, because the school district's going online, by October they might be right back in the classroom too. We just don't know. We're in the classroom by October, we could all be online. With all of this, we don't know. So everyone has decisions to make in life, and we do know that we have staff that are maybe looking somewhere else because it might be a better opportunity. And I've heard that, and I've also heard from staff from other school districts that are saying, well, you guys in Point, you've got your stuff together. I wish I was in your school district. So I've heard this my whole career, whether it's COVID or whether it's another program that gets created. So I'm not taking anything away from that. There's some accuracy to that. But doggone it, we cannot not go back to school because we have staff that don't want to come back. If they have a medical reason why they can't come back, we will accommodate them, absolutely. And I'm probably not going to make a lot of friends with my statements tonight, but doggone it, I believe that children are best served in schools. And quite frankly, this issue is so hot, there will be superintendents in the state of Wisconsin, and I'll leave it at that, that will not be in their school districts next year. Because you're not going to win this one. There are 2 sides to this, and the 2 sides don't see eye to eye, the 2 sides won't talk to each other, and the 2 sides don't agree. However, I'm hearing from the far left and the far right, and as far as I'm concerned, neither one of those far left and far right can see straight. We need to deal with reasonable people in the middle, but we're not. I'm hearing from 10% on each side. That tells me I think there's about 80% of the people are just fine with what we're doing. I firmly believe that. If we weren't going to school and we went online, you would have a whole lot more challenge than you do right now. You would have people lining up. And I'm not making the decision because of that. I'm making the decision because right now, I believe it's the right thing to do. Come September 1st, that may change because things in Portage County change in a direction that we hope they don't.
I just want to note that we as a board in June adopted a plan. And the plan provided for the number one priority of safety for students and staff. The number two priority was flexibility, to be able to move within the 3 modes of instruction that were covered by that plan. The third leg of the plan was to support the best educational option that we could safely provide. I want to note that since we passed that, that is what our administration has been working on literally every day and lots of weekends. They are working on providing those 3 modes of instruction that we as a board approved, and doing their best to have any of those options based on what COVID is preventing in our community in the best interest of our students and our staff and our family. And if they weren't doing that, we wouldn't have those options. I appreciate that administration has acted to both continue to flesh out as well as provide those options, assuming COVID allows for our community. And I do want to note, I've been in and out of this building all summer long, and I want to echo what Chris said about the incredible dedication of our administration, of our staff, our whole staff. I mean, the fact that we have bus drivers that are, and our food service people who have been willing to step up all summer long, well, since March, to provide food support for our community. The fact that an initial decision had been made to potentially not provide food service in August, and within a short period of days, a plan was created because of the reality of what happened for so many of our families at the end of July, in terms of benefit drop-offs, et cetera, et cetera. It really has taken our entire staff dedicated to stepping up in support of our students and families and co-workers since COVID hit us. And I just really want to I just haven't seen people work harder. People sacrificing their personal time, people sacrificing their weekends, people sacrificing their vacations, people staying up all hours to, whether it's working on lesson plans. I mean, our staff, I know, has been asked to provide, just to dig deep and provide a huge, huge amount of effort since COVID hit, and I am fundamentally grateful for it. Are there any other questions or comments from board members with respect to the school reopening plan? All right, we will move into item B, which is our referendum project update.
Well, our referendum project update wouldn't be any different than last month. It's the same report. Obviously, with our buildings being empty in March of students, we're ahead of schedule. As Tom had indicated, over the course of time, from a budgetary standpoint, we've had projects that have been over, we've had projects that have been under. I can safely say we're at budget. which is a good thing. We continue to plan for, oh my goodness gracious, the last set of buildings this year for construction next summer. And you tell
I can cover those if you want.
Sure, Tom, go ahead.
Do this. We have, paid to date, we have $28,427,610. You'll see that in the attached memo in the agenda. And the contract balance, the contracts issued to date so far total just under 58.5 million, with the balance being about 30 million. And when you include all contracts, the remaining balance is about just under $20 million. So we're moving along nicely. Jefferson and Madison's contracts, you just approved a bunch of those last month. We'll be starting those projects quite soon. They'll have areas fenced off where they'll begin work. They want to get the footings in, of course, before the frost, get the building additions enclosed so that they can continue to work throughout the school year. And the buildings will have full usage, of course, during that time period. Kennedy Elementary will have all of its work on the inside and remodeling done in time for the start of school. The addition to that building will be done probably in October. With all of these projects, we gained a little extra time because schools were closed from the COVID. It allowed the construction workers to double down and move up a lot of the stuff and get work done more quickly. Clover, Whiting, Roosevelt, and Spash likewise will all be ready for the start of school. We should be given our occupancy permits, assuming everything goes according to plan and is okay, sometime around the 24th of this month, and then we'll be able to get everybody inside. PJ is also ready, will be ready for school. That project is not completely done. We have a whole nother phase to do next year with respect to the heating plant there. They got a bunch of work done this year, and then next summer they'll be working on that. So we'll be moving right along. Next year we'll get into other projects we'll be bidding out, like McDill, McKinley, and that type of thing. Support services and transportation, some of those little things will be going on. So that's kind of where we're at. There's a lot of things happening, but it's going along as planned.
Thanks, Tom.
You're welcome.
Do board members have any questions of Craig or Tom with respect to the referendum projects? Okay, we will move into, we've got our meeting dates and times. Our next regular scheduled school board meeting will be scheduled for September 14th. Again, as we noted last month, in the event we need the superintendent, we believe that we need an additional special board meeting before the start of the school year. We will be letting board members know as soon as possible. Moving into closed session, we are looking for a motion to go into closed session pursuant to Wisconsin State Statutes 1985 paren 1C and 1985 paren 1E, specifically closed session 1985 paren 1 paren C, considering employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility, specifically to consider the approval of the hiring of the Washington Elementary principal. Closed session 1985 paren 1C, considering employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility, specifically to consider the approval of the hiring of the assistant principal / career and technology education coordinator. Closed session 1985 paren 1 paren C, considering employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility, specifically to consider the approval of the hiring of the interim dean of students at SPASH. Closed session 1985, paren 1, paren C, considering employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility, specifically to consider the approval of the hiring of the interim dean of students at McDill. And closed session 1985, paren 1, paren C, considering employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility, specifically to consider the approval of an extended leave of absence. 1985, paren 1, paren E, deliberating or negotiating the purchasing of public properties, the investing of public funds, or conducting other specified public business, specifically to consider the purchase of property. Could I have a motion to
Move
go
to
into
go
closed
into
session?
closed session.
Second.
A motion by Ebel, second by
Could have done.
Trish. Any discussion or questions? I will have Dan call the roll.
Mr. Pope,
Yes.
Ms. Vang,
Yes.
Ms. Scott,
Yes.
Ms. Baker,
Yes.
Ms. Portson,
Yes.
Mr. Ebel,
Yes.
Mr. Wade,
Yes.
Ms. Earler.
Yes. Hey, why don't you give us about 10 minutes?
Barb?